Right, this game will be played against the clock, so the idea is to get the ball to its final destination in the shortest time. So we will want to be able to display the elapsed time since the start of the game on the screen, which means of course we need a user interface. So as before, the best way to get a user interface, just click on Create, go down to UI for user interface and choose text. And that will automatically create a canvas for us and an event system. Right, as before, the canvas by default is huge. There it is, and there's our tray down in the bottom corner. We can go into 2D to look at this. Oops. There we go, and we can see it in 2D now. Now, in fact, when you're using a 3D game, you've got a number of options with the canvas. If we look down here, we've got the render mode, screen space overlay, so that's the same as in the 2D, but we do have the option of having it related to the camera, so it can move with the camera like a head-up display, or we can put it in our world, as in world space, so it could be like a billboard. We're going to stay with the simple overlay here. Okay. So we've got the text box, which is in the center here. I think it'll be convenient to put the text at the top left corner. So again, if we click here and then Shift and Alt, and that puts the pivot up to the top left corner, and we'll just move it in a bit from there just to get it out of the corner slightly. There we are, and we can see it appearing there. Now, we're going to start with it saying something like time 00 minutes 00 seconds. Okay. Now we've got our Arial font in here, but I thought let's be a bit ambitious, and I've created a folder called fonts. I've got a font in here, and this is one I found free on the internet for personal use, and downloaded it and put it into this folder. And I'm just going to drag that up into the font box, and immediately we've got our new font. And make that a bit bigger. Too big. 24 seems to fit that box quite nicely, but of course if you wanted it bigger, you just need to expand this box. That's fine. Change the colour. What colour shall I have here? Perhaps a nice blue, maybe a bit darker. Yeah, that'll do. And I'll rename this as Clockbox. Of course, you can name it anything you like, anything that's memorable to you, significant. Right. Now, we're going to have this update in real time, so we're going to need to have a code to do that. So let's go back to main, and let's create our standard empty game controller. And again, the purpose of this is just to hold a script. I'm going to put it to 00. I'm just going to add that component of a new script. And I'm going to call this game control. Right, so there we are. Again, it's probably appeared in the assets folder, which is rather scruffy, but I'm going to move it into the scripts folder just to keep things neat. If you go there, still there. Okay, gone into the scripts folder with our other script. Right, let's edit it. bit slow today. Not me, just the computer. So that should take us into Mono Develop. Yes. Oh dear. Just had a small glitch there. I've had to restart Mono Develop. Okay, so here we are in the game control. Now, the first thing was we're going to need to use the user interface. So remember to add it at the top here. Unity Engine .ui. And that gives us access to all of the components in the user interface. So I want to make a reference to that box. So that's a text, and I'm going to call it blockbox again. Right. I also need a private global variable and of the float type, which is the start time. Because remember that time.time gives a record of the time in seconds since the game started. So what I need to do is to work out the time the game starts and then subtract any future times from that. So in the start here, which I'm going to make use of, I'm going to make start time equals time dot time. Okay. Right, so in the update, I don't need a fixed update here because we're only interested in seconds, not thousandths of a second. Right, so the first thing we're going to need to do is find out what the current time is. So I'm going to make that float. Current time equals time dot time minus start time. Now that's going to give us the time that we've got to at this point in the game. The trouble is it's going to be in thousandths of a second, so I'm not really interested in the fine details, just the seconds. So instead of having a float, I'm going to change this to an int, which means I'm not really interested in the decimal parts. I'm just interested in whole seconds. So in the math library, mathf, I'm going to choose floor to int. Okay, so that just removes the decimal part of it, so we'll have the time in seconds as an integer. Okay. Now the trouble with the time is it's in 60s, so we get 60 seconds in a minute, as you know. And so we need to apply a bit of cunning maths to do that. So I'm needing to do some fancy formatting at the time. Right, so the first thing is that we need to separate the minutes from the seconds. So int minutes equals spelling mistake, current time divided by 60. Right, so we're working integers here, so this will automatically give an integer, a whole number. So what happens to the seconds? Well, the seconds is the remainders. So don't you remember your first introduction to division at school? But we used to talk about, say, 2 remainder 3. Okay, so we need to find the remainder of that. So int seconds equals current time, and we use this, which is known as the modulo, which is simply a percentage sign. That returns the remainder. So in minutes we should have a whole number relating to minutes, and in seconds we should have the remainder. Now the next thing is formatting it. So I'm going to make a string. I'm going to call it time string. So we start off with time. Okay. So the next thing is to add on the minutes to that. Now, if we've got 10 minutes or more, that's fine. It's going to be formatted quite nicely. But if we've got, say, 6 minutes, then we're going to have to pad that out with a 0. Okay, so I'm just going to add on a little bit here, a condition. So if minutes is less than 10, so units, then we've got time string plus equals, we're adding on to it. So if it's less than 10, we're going to add on a 0. Plus minutes, but we don't want the number, we want to turn that into a string. So we've got a toString function here. Okay, don't forget to add on the brackets because it is a function. Now, if it's not less than 10, we go straight ahead. So we can put in an else here. So this is what we do if it's not less than 10. So in this case, time string plus equals minutes to string. Okay. So now we've managed it, whatever the condition is. We need to add on the seconds now. So we can do the same thing with the seconds. So if seconds is less than 10, so again we're adding something on. We're going to add on a colon. Actually, we'll just put that in there. So put a 0 in there. Plus seconds to string. Again, else. So if it's not less than 10, then we've got time string plus equals, and then we just put in the colon. And close the curly brackets. Right, so we should have the time string now, so we can put that into our text box, so the clock box. Clock box dot text equals time string, and that should display our clock. Let's just test it, make sure the code's okay. Made any silly mistakes? Seem to be okay there, no errors popping up. Good. So if we go back to our game, and we just wait for the public variable to appear here, so it should update shortly. I think, there we go. So again, we've got the clock box here, which I'll put in there. Right, let's try that. So we should find that we've got a real-time clock now. Fingers crossed. There we are, and it's counting up in seconds. And once we go past the minute, it should update automatically into the minutes. Okay, but I won't wait for that. Let's just give it a pause and let's see.